Hey y'all, what's up? I hope you are well. My name is Patricia, your born and raised small town girl, here to remind you the unthinkable can happen anywhere. Welcome back, guys. If you are here for the first time, welcome. I am so glad you are here. Today, we are diving into part 6, the final part of our Route 29 series about young women who have disappeared in small town areas near Route 29 in Virginia. When I started this series, I wanted to share the cases that are talked about most in regards to the Route 29 stalker. However, after I dug in, I found there are so many more cases that are connected in one way or another, so I had to narrow it down to the ones that were the closest to each other in proximity and seem to be the cases most talked about, especially on Reddit when you search Route 29 stalker. This week, we are going to talk about the case that most believe is the first. But before I dive in, if you didn't see my post on socials about the delay in releasing this episode, I want to explain real quick. First, I had a serious problem with the mic I had. I would record episodes and whole gaps of what I was saying would be gone or go fuzzy. I was having to record over and over. It just wasn't feasible. I also had some health issues that sort of took precedence over everything. I spent a few days in the hospital and many in bed, unable to do anything. I have a new mic now and have started a new medication regimen, so things are settling. I promise you guys I will get better with releasing every week on time. I'm being tested to see if I will give up because I have a tendency to get frustrated and feel like I can't do something when it gets too hard. But not this time. I'm going to keep pushing despite the obstacles. These cases deserve to be told. I appreciate you all so much for understanding and for sticking with me. Second, I always want to be upfront with all of you. In doing that, I have to say, I believe during this Route 29 series, I got off track from my original purpose of this podcast. Not that those stories didn't deserve to be told. I am glad I was able to share the stories for these victims. But from now on, I will be staying in my niche of small town cases. Now that's enough of my rambling. Let's get into it. March 2nd, 1996, Virginia State Police Trooper David Rosillo had just begun his 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift when he noticed a white Mercury Tracer parked along the road 2 miles south of Culpeper on southbound Route 29. 2 miles south of Culpeper on southbound Route 29. There was a napkin tucked under the windshield wiper, a universal sign that something was wrong with the car. At the start of his shift, Trooper Rosillo had been made aware of a be on the lookout or bolo for a car that fits this description. When he pulled over to check it out, he found out that it was the exact 1993 Mercury Tracer from the bolo. Alicia Showalter Reynolds, the woman who owned the car, had been reported missing and hadn't been seen in several hours. This made the car a possible crime scene, so he immediately contacted the Bureau of Criminal Investigation. Alicia had left the home she shared with her husband Mark Reynolds in Baltimore, Maryland around 7:30 that Saturday morning. She had a day of shopping planned with her mom, Sadie Showalter. The two planned to meet at Fashion Square Mall in Charlottesville, Virginia at 10:30 a.m. They were hoping to find dresses for Alicia's twin brother's upcoming wedding. When Sadie arrived at the mall on time, she found it weird that Alicia wasn't already there. It wasn't like Alicia to be late. She was a very punctual person. Sadie said, quote, right about 11 she wasn't there and I said, this is not like Alicia. I wonder what's going on. But I made myself wait until 11:15 and then I finally called her husband Mark, end quote. Mark told Sadie the weather had been kind of nasty that morning in Baltimore, so maybe she had been driving a little slower at first, and that was why she was running a little late. He asked Sadie to give it a little bit longer, and if she didn't show up, to call him back. Sadie continued to wait, but was becoming more worried by the minute. We have to remember this was a time before everyone had cell phones, so she couldn't just call her or check her location like she could have today. Sadie had to sit there hoping that every car that passed was Alicia. By 2 p.m., she knew there was no way Alicia would be that late, even if she drove at a snail pace. So she called Mark back. Mark realized at that point he had to call the police. By morning, the police set up a roadblock where Alicia's car had been found, hoping someone saw something and could give them some type of direction to go in. After speaking with several people, they found that Alicia's car had been left somewhere between the time of 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. They also had several people tell them that they saw Alicia talking to a clean-cut man in a dark-colored pickup. Robert McLeod Sr., a resident of Riva along Route 29 close to Culpeper, told reporters that on the afternoon of March 2nd, he saw a woman believed to be Alicia and an unidentified white male near the vehicle as he was traveling north toward Culpeper between 10:30 and 10:45 a.m. He said there was a black Nissan pickup truck parked about 10 feet from her car. Both vehicles were parked headed south. Quote, when I topped the hill coming from Riva, I saw a man and a woman putting the hood down on the car. I thought maybe it was out of gas, end quote. When he got parallel with them, he saw the female get into the passenger side of the truck and the man get into the driver's seat. McLeod said it looked like she got into the truck on her own free will. McLeod said he thought it was weird that the car was still there when he drove back by 3 hours later. Investigators scoured the median as well as the wooded area near where her car was found with search and rescue dogs, while forensic experts went through Alicia's car looking for any clues. They even had helicopters equipped with forward-looking infrared flying over the area looking for any sign of Alicia. Thankfully, the investigators were pulling out all the stops in an effort to locate Alicia. Local news stations immediately started reporting about Alicia, hoping to spread awareness and possibly gain more leads, which did end up being successful. Several women saw the news stories and contacted investigators saying they had interactions with a man fitting the same description as the man said to be last seen with Alicia. This led the investigators to begin to believe that whatever happened to Alicia may have been a plot that had been developing for weeks, if not longer. Because of this and the possible serial behavior of the suspect, the FBI got involved. They assigned 4 agents to work full-time with local law enforcement on Alicia's case. Special Agent Thomas Carter, one of the agents assigned, said, quote, most of the witnesses talked about a man who would come up behind them or beside them in a dark small pickup truck, flashing his headlights, honking his horn, looking in any way he could to attract their attention. Most of the women that did have some concern for their vehicle did manage to pull off to the side of the road. He immediately jumps under the vehicle, conducts an examination, comes out, and then engages them in a very polite conversation about the mechanical difficulties that he has allegedly uncovered, end quote. He would then offer to drive the women to the nearest phone. At least 2 women came forward to say that they had accepted the ride and nothing happened to them. This sicko was basically doing dry runs with these women to see how far he could get without making them feel uncomfortable. Agent Carter went on to explain, quote, some of the women would not pull over for him, but merely went to the next exit or their destination and had someone else look at their vehicle. The only instances where we found the individual became agitated were those instances where women refused to pull over for him, and in those instances, there was a display of anger such as pounding his fist on the steering wheel, end quote. Investigators suspected this behavior was him sizing victims up. He was seeing who would pull over and who wouldn't. He was trying to find a victim he knew he could achieve his goal with. They believed he was enjoying the feeling that he was outsmarting the police and was commanding the media. They found the first incidence of a situation like this was reported on January 17th, 6 weeks before Alicia's disappearance. And the last reported incident was March 1st, the day before Alicia's disappearance. Investigators were gathering all of the information so a profile for the suspect could be created by experts at the National Center for Analysis of Violent Crime at Quantico. This profile was intended to give the public an idea of the characteristics of the suspect as he would be acting after the kidnapping. Because a suspect had not been narrowed down, this profile could help people look for these characteristics in the people around them. These characteristics included someone who had been noticed to be increasingly anxious, fearful, suspicious, or apprehensive. The person may have been paying an abnormal amount of attention to the case. The person's interest in the case could border on the edge of fixation with all aspects of the case. If the person had a job, they may have unexpectedly taken their annual leave or sick leave the day after Alicia's disappearance. The person may withdraw from normal social contact with coworkers, neighbors, or anyone else. The suspect may have abruptly changed their appearance so that they didn't match the composite drawings. They may have changed their hair color, may have made changes to facial hair, or stopped/started wearing glasses. The suspect may have suddenly started driving another vehicle because the description of the truck being so good. Alicia's family was doing everything they could to get the info out there Flyers were posted all along Route 29 with info about Alicia, when she was last seen, and what she was wearing. They also did interviews with news stations trying to keep her face in the news. Her parents left a candle burning in their Harrisonburg home to represent their hope that Alicia would come home safe. They placed navy and gold ribbons where she was last seen along Route 29. Patrick Showalter, Alicia's twin, said the ribbons served as a reminder to drivers passing by about his sister's disappearance, as well as their own safety. Alicia's husband told interviewers that he would shower every day and shave his face like Alicia liked it, so he would be ready when she came home. He kept a bag packed near the front door to be prepared for when he got the call that she had been found. He had things she would need in the bag, like some clean clothes and such. So sweet, and it shows so much love. Could you imagine what it must have been like day after day, not knowing when your partner was coming home? The person you do life with, sleep with every night, and spend every day with. I would feel so lost. The disappearance of Alicia left the rural community of Culpeper anxious and fearful. Culpeper's only gun shop sold out of all of their small handguns. Women felt scared to go out of town alone, and they stopped running errands after dark. Irvin Bennett, the county supervisor, said, quote, "Maybe a bit of innocence has been lost. Innocence, once you lose it, it's hard to regain. Something has been stolen from everyone in the county. People are less likely to stop and offer help." End quote. Despite that feeling, the community was pitching in to try to find Alicia. J.D. Cave, owner of a local Harrisonburg radio station, came up with the idea to help. He decided to record a sort of public service announcement. He recorded Alicia's dad, Harvey Showalter, for a 60-second spot where he explained the situation, the reward, and asked for help to find his daughter. Cave ran the announcement on his stations and also made over 220 copies to send to all the radio stations in Virginia, which wasn't an easy feat back in the 90s. Martin Media Outdoor Advertisement of Culpeper put up 4 billboards with the sketches of the possible suspect, as well as about the reward and a number for individuals to contact with any information. The reward was $25,000 from the Showalters' friends and family, as well as $10,000 from the Culpeper supervisors. A month into Alicia being missing, the family was becoming frustrated with the pace of the investigation. Sadie Showalter told reporters, quote, "We haven't found her. We haven't found the suspect. We haven't found the suspect's vehicle," end quote. Despite their frustration, the family felt grateful for the hard work investigators were putting in, but felt they were lacking any type of answers. I am such an empath. When I think about this, I can put myself in the Showalters' shoes and imagine the pain they must have felt during this time, not knowing where their loved one is and not knowing what else they can do. They were dependent upon the investigators and them doing their jobs. When asked about the pace, investigators said they were still very motivated to find Alicia because she could still be alive. They said they had cleared more than 120 potential suspects and had received more than 2,100 leads in the first 30 days. Tragically, on May 7, 1996, the flame on the candle the Showalters had been keeping in hope of Alicia's return was snuffed out. When a Virginia State Police officer contacted them to tell them a body was found in Lingham, Virginia, 15 miles southeast from Culpeper. A man who was working outside the day before noticed buzzards flying around at the end of a dead-end gravel road. He decided to check out what was happening, thinking there may have been a dead animal that needed to be dealt with. However, upon approaching, he found it was human remains. He immediately called the state police. Investigators arrived on the scene 2 hours later. With the remains, they found boots, a dress, and rings that were found to be what Alicia was wearing when she left her home 37 days earlier. Wayne Huggins, Virginia State Police Superintendent, said her body was fairly intact, lying in a depression. He said her body was covered with limbs and not visible from a road that runs through there. Alicia's body was found less than a mile from the only building on that road, a home for abused children that had been operating for 3 years. Investigators theorized the killer may have been familiar with the area because of how relatively secluded it was. When her remains were removed, they were taken to the General Sciences Forensics Laboratory in Fairfax, Virginia, for proper identification and to determine cause of death. The day after Alicia's remains were found, authorities from Virginia State Police, the FBI, the Culpeper Sheriff's Office, and the Town of Culpeper Police Department combed the area hoping to find evidence and possibly answers. They recovered latent fingerprints and DNA evidence. Dr. Paul Ferreira, director of the Virginia Department of Forensic Science, would not say where the fingerprints were found. He said they were chemically enhanced and can be checked by computer with those on file in Virginia and in other states. German Shepherds from the Virginia Search and Rescue Dog Association spent 2 hours sniffing for possible clues in the area. Specific results were not disclosed, but it was disclosed that dogs pointed out 7 spots near where Alicia's body was found that carried a human scent. Residents of this tiny town were mortified. Things like this didn't happen in their town. Prior to this, it was safe, but now everything had changed. A Lignum resident told reporters, quote, "There's a lot of anger and disbelief that such a thing could happen here among us," end quote. When Alicia's mom spoke to journalists, she said despite the heartbreak of knowing her oldest daughter was dead, at least she knew where she was. She said not knowing her daughter's fate, whether she was suffering, dead, or being cared for somewhere, was torture for her. She said the family could begin to heal. She said she asked God to let them know to end the torture. Quote, "My prayers were answered yesterday evening. Not the way we wanted, but he did answer. She was the kind of daughter I learned a lot from. I am really going to miss that." End quote. Damn, that's rough. That'll make you tear up. Alicia's twin told the U.S. Sun that not knowing where his sister was or what had happened to her was agonizing. Quote, "Wondering what kind of state she was in. Was she alive? Was she dead? Is she being abused? How much is she suffering? Those kind of things just eat at you constantly. So when her body was found, it was actually a great relief in a way." End quote. I can absolutely understand her family feeling that way. I cannot imagine the misery that they must have been feeling. Her husband was struggling to come to terms with reality. He told reporters, quote, "I still haven't unpacked the bag waiting by the door for her in case I got a call that she was in the hospital or found wandering in the woods somewhere. Right now, I'm still numb. I can't feel my hands right now." End quote. The absolute torment. I don't even want to try to fathom how he must have been feeling. Let me tell you about Alicia so you can see the amazing human this world was deprived of when Alicia's future was stolen. Alicia Faye Showalter was born August 5th, 1970 in Harrisonburg, Virginia, to her parents Harley and Sadie Showalter. She and her twin brother Patrick were only 10 minutes apart, which is cool. I have twins and they are only 9 minutes apart. The couple gave birth to their third and final child, Barbara, 5 years later. Alicia graduated from Harrisonburg High School in 1988. Her principal told the Washington Post that she was always smiling and that she cared so much for others. He said he believed she was going to have a successful life. STEM was where Alicia's heart was. She attended a Young Woman in Science program at Mary Baldwin University in Stanton, Virginia. Due to her love for all things science, it only makes sense that she went on to get her undergraduate degree, majoring in biology and chemistry from Goshen College in Indiana. Her biology professor at Goshen described Alicia as dedicated, fun-loving, and generous. He said she had a strong work ethic in the classroom and exemplified the spirit of what everyone at Goshen College does at their best. Because of this, a memorial scholarship was created in her honor. The webpage for this scholarship reads, quote, "She was a beautiful person, and she also had a beauty of character. Friends recall her unique giggle, her dancing in the rain, and her love for her husband." Alicia's passion didn't end at science, though. She had a love for music as well. This love led to her playing oboe in the orchestra while she was in college. It's evident that Alicia was so well-rounded. In 1992, after receiving her undergraduate degree, she accepted an offer into a graduate pharmacology program at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. While living in Baltimore, Alicia met Mark Reynolds. They hit it off and were married by May of 1994 in Alicia's home church in Harrisonburg, Virginia. She had aspirations of digging deeper in the sciences and had hopes of being a college professor one day. She was in her 4th year as a doctoral student when she was murdered. During that year, she was working on developing a vaccine for schistosomiasis, a widespread parasitic disease that affected millions of people, especially children. Alicia and Mark had plans to travel to Africa where she could administer the vaccine once it was approved, and he could offer dental services while they were there as well. Her vaccine was scheduled for review by the WHO, the World Health Organization, that year. Alicia's father told WHSV that his daughter was very dedicated to her research and her work as a scientist. Quote, "She was very good at research and she was very committed and focused. She knew what her challenge was and she wanted to solve a problem." End quote. Her parents described her as a quiet, mature, conscientious young woman, dedicated, very focused, and tough. Quote, she had a sparkle about her when she allowed herself to have the freedom and time to show the enjoyment. End quote. It is evident the world lost a bright light the moment the disgusting human that did this decided Alicia was his next target. A life so full of light was taken, and to this day the identity of the person who did this remains unknown. Many believe the so-called Route 29 stalker is responsible. In fact, this case is where that theory truly began to take shape, and it's not hard to understand why. Alicia was not the only woman found in that secluded stretch of Lingnum, Virginia. Within a rural crossroads made up of 6 houses and a post office, 2 other women were discovered as well. 3 women in 4 months in a place so quiet that one death alone would have been shocking. This suggests familiarity with the area, a connection, or a reason to dump there. Let me briefly tell you about the other women, and you can decide if you think they are connected. On July 14, 1996, 74-year-old Thelma Scroggins was found murdered in her home in Lingnum, Virginia. She was an organist at her church, so when she didn't show up for Sunday service, friends went to look for her. They came across the heartbreaking discovery that she had been shot in the head. A friend who had been talking to Thelma on the phone the previous night said that Thelma said she needed to get off the phone because someone was knocking on her door. There have been no arrests in this case, and from what I could find, there isn't even a suspect. This made me wonder if Thelma witnessed something in regards to Alicia's murder, which led the killer to return to make sure she couldn't speak. The only thing that doesn't make sense about that theory is why wait until July? If she did see something, she had several months to say something, but it just feels too close to not be connected. On September 22nd, 1996, 2 men who were walking their dogs in the woods in Culpeper County right near Lingnum when they came across badly burned human remains. The remains were burned so bad dental records had to be used to identify the victim as 20-year-old Ann Carolyn McDaniel. Ann lived in a home for physically and developmentally disabled adults. They had reported Ann missing on September 19th when she didn't come back from going out. She had told staff and her housemates that she was going on a date. No one knew who she was meeting or where she was planning on going. Ann had moved to the group home as part of her goal to become more independent, so she could kind of come and go pretty much as she liked as long as she followed rules as well as the curfew. Ernest Crane, owner of the Main Street Texaco less than a block from the adult home, said Ann walked to the payphone several times a day. She said that she was talking to her boyfriend who lived in Culpeper. Unfortunately, she never told anyone any details about this boyfriend except that he lived in Culpeper. Ann's body was found only 5 miles from Alicia's. Both Ann and Alicia's bodies were 100 feet from the road. It was found Ann's cause of death was asphyxiation. I find it strange that the suspects seemed like they were trying to get caught and trying not to get caught at the same time. 100 feet from the road in a densely wooded area makes no sense. Why wouldn't he decide to hide them much better? Did he want them to be found so he could get more pleasure out of seeing what he did in the media? Locals hypothesize that the person who dumped Ann and Alicia knew his way around the desolate back roads and knew how to avoid being seen. The location and timing are the only clear link between these killings, which involved women of varying ages and hometowns. Virginia State Police would not discuss the possibility that one killer was responsible. However, Larry McCain, a state police serial killer specialist, confirmed he was involved in the Lingnum area slaying investigation, but he refused to discuss it any further. Fear had begun to settle over the small community, especially for local women. Everyday routines suddenly felt unsafe. Women told reporters that they were doing things like carrying a 2x4 in their car. Go ahead. And they were doing things like calling friends and family to let them know where they were going at all times. Some didn't even feel safe to go anywhere alone and would not go out unless they had someone with them. And for many, the fear began to erode something even deeper, the instinct to help others. One local woman said, quote, "It's gotten to the point that when you see someone stop needing your help and waving you down, you don't know if you should stop and help them or keep going." End quote. Investigators had multiple people on their radar, but nothing solid enough to make an arrest. The suspect introduced himself to these ladies as Larry Breeden when he pulled them over. But after looking into that name, they soon learned that was an alias. Many believed a man named Darrell Rice was responsible. His father lived near Route 29 and he often used his dad's truck, which was similar to the one described by the women, and he did have a violent history. On July 7, 1997, Rice was charged with kidnapping and attempted murder of a Canadian tourist, Yvonne Malbasha, who was cycling near Shenandoah National Park. She survived and testified against him. That's right, girl. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison for the attack on her. Rice was in court again in August of 2005, charged with the attempted abduction of Carmelita Shomo. On February 23, 1996, Carmelita was driving along Route 234 in Dumfries, Virginia, about 47 miles from where Alicia's car was found. She said he pulled her over and told her that her car's CV joints were loose. She accepted a ride from him to the closest gas station to get help. However, when riding with him, she began to feel strange and started asking him to pull over. This made him angry, which turned into him attacking her with a screwdriver. She jumped out of the car and broke her ankle, but got away safely. She identified Rice from a photo lineup as the man who pulled her over. However, he was found not guilty due to her credibility being questioned because she had accused someone else at first, Richard Evidence. We are about to talk about him because he is another suspect people believe to be the Route 29 stalker. Rice was also charged with the murders of Julianne Williams and Laura Winans. They were found along the Appalachian Trail in the Shenandoah National Forest on June 1st, 1996, which was 11 weeks after Alicia's disappearance and 17 days after her remains were found. They were found bound with their mouths gagged and their throats slit. So viciously murdered. So vicious. The two had been camping at Shenandoah National Park. Their campsite was less than an hour away from where Alicia's remains had been found. Rice was described as a woman hater, especially lesbians. Julianne and Laura were a couple, which lent to the speculation that he was involved. They were last seen May 24th. Rice was seen by a witness in the Shenandoah National Park on May 24th as well. He was also seen on video entering the Shenandoah National Forest on May 25th and May 26th. Ultimately, though, the DNA linked someone else to their murders. In the end, a man named Walter, aka Leo Jackson Sr., was proved to be the one responsible for the horrific murders of Julianne and Laura. There has never been any evidence linking Rice to Alicia's murder, just speculation. Navy veteran Richard Evidence was also on the list of possible suspects. He abducted, raped, and strangled 3 teenage girls in Central Virginia before committing suicide. On September 9, 1996, he abducted Sophia Silva from her front yard in Spotsylvania County. Her body was found a month later in a creek off State Route 3 in King George County. This is about 50 miles from Culpeper. 8 months later, on May 1st, 1997, he kidnapped, raped, and strangled to death 15-year-old Christy and 12-year-old Katie Lisk. The sisters' bodies were found in the South Anna River 5 days later. This is about 40 miles from Culpeper. Then on June 24, 2002, Evidence abducted 15-year-old Kara Robinson from her friend's yard in Columbia, South Carolina. He took her to his apartment, raped her, and then tied her to his bed. However, after Evidence fell asleep, Kara escaped and identified him as her attacker. Evidence fled and was tracked to Sarasota, Florida. When police closed in on him, he committed suicide. Fucking good riddance, in my opinion. But like with Rice, there is no evidence connecting Evidence to Alicia's murder. The weird thing is the description given of the man pulling women over generally fits both Darrell Rice and Richard Evidence. However, Alicia's family suspected someone else, the Long Island serial killer Rex Heuermann, for a couple reasons. First, his mother was living in Palmyra at the time of Alicia's murder, which is about only 50 miles from where her remains were found. He also had a resemblance to one of the sketches released after Alicia's disappearance. Alicia's brother said, quote, "When I saw the picture of Rex Heuermann, subtract 27 years from the way he looks now, it's the first time I've seen anyone look anything like the composite sketches that were done at the time of my sister's abduction," end quote. Showalter's sister, Barbara, felt the same way. Quote, "The similarities are striking, the eyes and the cheeks, the face structure," end quote. It's terrifying that there were so many monsters like this all in the same area at the same time. So much so that there's a list of possible fucking suspects. That's terrifying. When the 1-year anniversary approached, Alicia's family let it pass by quietly. Her father said the family was coping but was still hopeful that the public would be able to help state police with information and leads. Alicia's loved ones still remain hopeful that justice will be served for her. Patrick spoke for the family when he said, though they want her killer to be caught, he hopes they never have to go through the trauma of a trial. He told the U.S. Sun that he has so many questions that he still wants answered, like why was Alicia targeted? Why was she killed? He wonders if the murderer feels any remorse. He went on to say he thinks he has forgiven them in many ways. Quote, I think you have to be a pretty disturbed person to do what they did. My hope would be that they found some peace, some kind of forgiveness, some kind of healing in their own lives. End quote. The Showalters have visited the logging area where Alicia's body was found several times, but going there did not provide any closure or ease of their grief. Her father said, quote, the only thing it helped me to understand was how crude and cruel and thoughtless and inconsiderate it was to put her away like that, end quote. He added, there are certain givens that we have to live with and move on. Nothing that we say or do is going to bring her back. We have our moments. I think because of all the caring and support, we've been able to move along. You can at least go to work and concentrate, but we're always dealing with missing her. The family has tried to get on with their lives. Mark went back to Baltimore to start his second year of dental school. Her brother Patrick got married and moved to Texas. Barbara had started graduate school in Rochester, New York. When asked about not knowing who took their daughter from them even after a year, Sadie Showalter said, quote, there's that need to know, yet I don't want that to consume my energies, because it's Alicia I'm missing. She's the one I lost. What happened just reinforces what we know about our world. We have good people and we have evil people, and evil does have its way. They said they feel no vengefulness, but want to see their daughter's killer brought to justice. Mark Reynolds said he now lives with a classmate in the same home he shared with Alicia. He said, I'm coping much better as time goes by. He said keeping busy helps. Quote, I'm sad and there's a lot of loneliness, but trapped inside the anger and vengeance wouldn't be a good place to be. I'm concerned this guy's still out there. It's important the violence stop, but this man being caught does not bring my wife back. End quote. Alicia's death tested Harley and Sadie's faith. Quote, early on I said, why didn't God keep her from getting into the vehicle? Why didn't he make the stop and just let her out? But we as humans have choices to make. Evil took over. You have to know God was there even though he couldn't save her from pain and death, and he's feeling the pain we're feeling, end quote. Larry McCain had investigated more than 1,500 murders, but he says the unsolved murder of Alicia is one of just 2 cases in his career that have haunted him off duty. Quote, in my life you leave work at work, and that's how you survive. In this case, I've worried incessantly about it, and that's how this case has been for everybody involved, end quote. In March of 2024, Virginia State Police released a statement saying they were still actively investigating the abduction and murder of Alicia. The suspected killer of Alicia is thought to be between 35 and 40 years old in 1996. He was somewhere between 5'10" to 6 feet tall, weighed between 180 to 190 pounds. He was clean shaven. He had reddish brown, light brown hair. It was equal length front and back, and he kept pushing it out of his face with his left hand. The man drove several different vehicles, most frequently a Neon, but also a Nissan Ford Ranger and a Mazda. All of the vehicles were dark colored. He may have sold or traded vehicles between January and March of 1996. There have been no further instances of a man trying to pull women over in the area since Alicia's disappearance and murder. The police have fingerprints and hair that belongs to Alicia's killer. They just need suspects with enough evidence pointing to them to justify using what they have to test it. This case is 30 years old this month. The family still doesn't have answers that they deserve so much. If you have any information about Alicia's abduction or murder, or anything that could give this family any type of relief, please contact Virginia State Police at 1-800-572-2260. I have so many thoughts about this case as well as the others in this series, so I put together a little final thoughts to close it out. It will be uploaded in a few days, so stay tuned. I want to thank you all so much for listening. Please subscribe so you will be notified when new episodes drop. Also, please give your girl a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. It's at This Doesn't Happen Here on Instagram and Facebook. And on TikTok, it's at This Doesn't Happen. Also, if you could rate and review the podcast wherever you are listening, that would help the podcast out greatly, and I would appreciate it so much. Until next time, remember, pure evil doesn't have city limits, and this does, in fact, happen here.